You've got the Centaur to help stampede you out if you're in a patch of trouble. PSG though go into the Wraith King.
Yeah.
So there's not much to worry about in terms of mana burn here from the side of Wind and Rain. A Gyrocopter, and we've seen Diffusal Gyrocopter before, of course. Not very common, but if you are worried about the Wraith King, I guess you could itemize for that. Doesn't feel great because 20 minutes you just get Ag Shard. So probably not what Wind and Rain will look for. However, you do have great ways of dealing with the Skeleton Summons just with the Gyrocopter, Flak Can to rip through. And that little bit of push pressure from PSG means that the Skellies might just bleed some gold out to Gyro. A bit of a back and forth there. Like we were talking about getting a bit more team fight. At least you've got a good stun now from your pause 1 on PSG's end. So we'll just have to see if they can kind of work that lane out. Disruptor plus Wraith King can be pretty aggressive early on. Level 1 for them is pretty good, especially with the damage output of Thunder Strike and the threat of a stun. Though ideally, you'd probably want your Aurus instead on the Wraith King. Level 2 and 3 is where it can get a bit spicy, but you are laning against Centaur and Rubik. So there is aggression that can come out. It just doesn't feel great with a Centaur on hand. He's really tanky. The Rubik, of course, would either lift or the Fade Bolt, means that your damage output's not going to be great anyway.
Absolutely not. They do have a lot of push though now, right, on Pecado squad. Like, you've got the Skellies, you've got the Exorcism as well, and that could be quite detrimental to the side of Wind and Rain this game. Not the greatest of D push on the side of Wind and Rain, and I suppose you have the Flak and you have a Fade Bolt, but that's pretty much all that they've got going for them right now. I'm going to go back to the Disruptor as well, John. I do like the Disruptor into the Centaur, right? Because you're going to have that Stampede, and it does get a little bit annoying if they pop Stampede and just run away in the middle of a team fight, but you've always got that glimpse back. And it can make it really difficult for the Centaur to play into Disruptor, because you just can't really trust your ulti's going to get you out. And so it kind of makes it more of an initiation ulti than anything, which is perfectly fine. But it's you're missing half the value when the Disruptor's around, and I think that can be quite detrimental, at least for Wind and Rain. But let's see how Pecado squad finishes off. They do still seem to lack either an off lane or a mid lane. You were pointing out the fact that they don't really have the greatest initiation with their draft right now with this next Disruptor. So maybe you'd like something else in the off lane to maybe get in and start those fights for the team. But we'll see. They might just run the offlane DP instead, because that was quite popular in the NA region, and probably still is, honestly. It's still very viable as well, right? Like, the hero still does the exact same thing in the offlane anyway, even after the new patch. It really hasn't changed.
Yeah, it still hits those timings, still push towers really well, you sustain yourself really well. So it'd still work out for PSG if they want to. They do have a little bit more time. Think about this one. Wind and Rain will have last pick overall, so they're going to be able to counteract. If you do want to flex it, they can easily pick strong mid to counteract. If you're going to flex a DP to that off lane, you do have to watch out there. You see a lot of mids banned out from both sides. It looks like Wind and Rain is expecting this to be a last pick mid. The DP flexed. But again, we'll see if PSG is feeling a bit sneaky today. You do have a couple of mid options left. Ember Spirit still in the pool. Storm is in the pool for both sides as well. So you could opt for one of those. You don't have the best instant stuns here from Wind and Rain to punish something like the Ember or Storm for PSG. For PSG's end, they've got the Nyx, so that can be annoying. They go with a Tiny instead. So you've got that bursty mid laner. You're looking for the blink timings there. You can hold out in the lane quite nicely. I think if you're Wind and Rain, you're just going to be eyeing a couple of those Bird Rudders. Like the Storm against Tiny sounds pretty decent. We've seen that a lot. You do have to worry about the Nyx, but we've already seen Storm into Nyx so many times. It is a threat, but it doesn't feel like a threat enough to dissuade you from picking one of those Spirit Brothers up. So if Wind and Rain wants to have that active mid that can just gap close for them, not depending on the Centaur, one of those Spirit Brothers could do a lot of good work. Issue is, outside of Nyx, Disruptor Static Storm could be a threat, but if you jump him first, it's not an issue.
Oh, it looks like it's going to be a mid Gyrocopter, John. PL safe lane now, so very interesting stuff here from Wind and Rain. A bit of a switch up. Unless I'm wrong and it's not a mid Gyrocopter, I guess we'll find out. I guess that does throw a bit of a spanner in the works here. Definitely something we weren't quite expecting. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with this draft and where everyone's laning. Like, I'm very sure the offlane should be Sword and the Centaur, and the safe lane should still be the PL in the safe lane. But what else is happening? it must be a mid gyro.
It's looking like it. It should be on paper. That definitely should be mid gyro. We'll see. It's kind of in a strange spot. It looks like Sabo might be stepping back to the pause 4 role here because of those roster swaps as well.
Right.
So we'll have to see. It does make paper to close out with PL, right? Like you don't have the. I mean, you have a tiny to kind of help you clear, but once you get the Fusel, Manta, and then the Heart, the illusions are harder to kill off. You can run down to Wraith King early on with just the diffusal timing for our PL. So we'll see what Wind and Rain kind of want to do with that. There's a lot of timings they have to meet with Gyrocopter and PL on the same side. For PSG, it's straightforward. You just maybe farm up for the Radiance on the Wraith King. If not, we tend to see Armlet come through early on, maybe with the SNY. For Q, blink timing's key on that Tiny. You just want to be able to jump in, close out in the back line, get your Avalanche Toss combo, and clean up from there. They do have some pretty good follow-up. Like, now with Tiny and Disruptor, you've got a decent way of holding people down into the Static Storm field. So you can kind of play around with those spikes once you hit level 6 there, and that's going to be important for PSG to do to kind of punish that greedy closeout from Wind and Rain.
Fair enough, John, but I'm going to ask you the hardest question. Who did come out with the better draft in your opinion, sir?
Bit tricky. I think both sides have some key timings to meet, some interesting build-ups. I would say I'd lean towards Wind and Rain in terms of draft, just because as long as they meet their timings, it should be easier to pull off. For PSG, they have to definitely play to a much earlier tempo. So we'll have to see if they can kind of hit those spikes, get that blink on QQQ. For Wind and Rain, you just don't... All you need to do is not bleed too much in these lanes. And then you can get some decent flash farm on the Gyro. It looks like Cassius is going onto the mid here, with our PL, again, running on the safe lane. So the mid Gyro's coming through. Cassius stepping down. Kind of the same situation with PSG, right? Like they sub in, both sides sub in one player, then their safe lane moves to mid. Their subs go onto the pause 1. So we'll have to see if it makes a big impact here, but this is a bit of a greedy start from Cassius. Starting off with a Quelling Blade, 2 branches, and the Circlet, not having a single set of tangos, so he just really wants to rush that bottle up. Now, in a lane against Tiny for a Gyrocopter, that doesn't sound too bad. You're on paper, you shouldn't be under threat from the Avalanche. Just be able to step back, Fluid Flak, threaten with the Rocket Barrage and Homing Missile if you want to in that lane. So you should still be able to get to the bottle without being punished without tangos, but if Q sees that, he might just opt to go a bit closer once he hits level 2, keep playing with Avalanche, and make it a bit tough for Cassius C there.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think the idea is he's just not going to take harassment before the bottle comes out anyway, and obviously against the Tiny, you always want to be contesting those power runes, and even the water runes, of course, and well, the Gyrocopter is a bit of a mana-dependent kind of hero. You want to be able to spam out those abilities and just keep them going. Especially even the Rocket Flare in this this matchup between him and the Tiny might be very effective if Q does get too far in. But now we are going to have to wait out this pause before we can continue the game. And both drafts do kind of have the heroes to go for those very early team fights. In fact, they could go right now in a 5v5 if they wanted. But it looks like they might avoid it. Just go for a 2-for-2 trade on those bounty runes to get things started. Going back to the drafts though, John, I asked you what the better draft was, and you went with Wind and Rain, I believe, and I was more leaning towards Pecado squad, if I was honest. So it's very interesting, John. We're a bit split up today in terms of drafts, but I look forward to seeing which one was stronger.
Yeah, I think for Wind and Rain, and there's definitely very tight timing windows for them to meet. Like you're trying to get farm of a Gyrocopter, you're trying to hit farm timings in your PL. Yeah, we're gonna have a bit of a reconnect there. Just a bit of an XD, as we did go ahead, but Sword needed to reconnect anyway. A bit of an oopsies there.
Nothing wrong with a bit of an XD, John. Fine. We'll report the Centaur. We'll forget whatever happened. It's all good. So, back to this pause, John. 20 seconds left till the game starts.
Beautiful.
You were talking about how you woke up 30 minutes before you had to start this game.
Yeah.
I want to let the viewers know you're lying. It was 18 minutes before you.
No, no. I was on at like right at the 30-minute mark. I was AFK in our channel early, Mike. You know, I can
Okay.
tell you didn't see it. You didn't see it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And
We have the
go
go
ahead.
Very good
Beautiful.
to see. All right, let's get into it. Game number 1 between Wind and Rain and Pecado squad. We'll see if Wind and Rain want to try and go for the fight down to the bot rune spots. I highly doubt it though. They are quite split up, and they'll probably just let it go. Why? He's around if he wants to throw a few hits, but looks like he won't even bother with that. Very even kind of start.
Yeah. No excitement, I think, again. There's always that level 1 threat. You don't want to bleed out first blood. You potentially lose out your rune as well if you overextend. So it's a more conservative start for both sides. Still, we'll get to see these lanes split out. Dabo is around on bot lane with on the top lane with a Rubik, along with Sword on the Centaur. They're going to be laning against Ego on that Raid King and Sensibility on that Disruptor. So there is some early aggression that can come true here for PSG. You are pocketing your level 1 here on Ego. Level 2 is a bit of a safer point. You get your stun out, you get the Thunder Strike off. You're going to be looking at the Rubik in that case. The Centaur can melt early on to this magic damage, but there's a lot more HP for Sword here. And of course, it's a melee lane for the Centaur to deal with. So if you come in too close, the Hoof Stomp comes through, and you take a lot of damage.
Yeah, it's not like Ego's really going to be able to fight back either, because you're going to have the Retaliate up soon on Sword as well, and it's going to make it a bit too challenging for the Wraith King. Of course, Ego will just want to secure his own CS and try to keep the farm up, try to keep safe as they go in again with another stun. I suppose you just do that every single time you have the opportunity with your Sword. So we'll have a look at the other lanes as well. Mid lane, of course, you've got Q there, along with Cassius C. They are up against each other, of course, and well, at least for now, they are evening out quite nicely. Just 5 for 5. So Cassius C did end up going for the homing missile as well as the rocket barrage. I think it should be able to offer some decent harassment up against this Tiny.
Definitely. You just want to be able to go in. Once the creep waves kind of dwindle down, use your rocket barrage, try to zone out QQQ. He will get his bottle up here, Cassius C, so he's not really completely punished for not having tangos. Q just not being able to really do too much. Does have the tree grab and avalanche, but you do have that range advantage as the gyro. When it comes down to taking those bottle refills on the water runes as they come up, both sides are kind of in the same boat. They don't really have natural mobility spells. You are slightly speedier as a gyro, but you have to watch out for the toss back from Q if you are walking in the same direction. So should end up being even in terms of getting that out. We'll have to see if the sports come true to try and deny that in terms of control, but I think in this case you might just want to leave it even at best. And Cassius E, in an even situation, the gyrocopter kind of enjoys that. You get your water rune, you stack up your small camp coming back in, and down the line the gyrocopter can just clear out his own stacks anyway. So there's a lot more flash farm potential here for Cassius E, but giving that much space to a Tiny means that he's gonna hit his level 4, level 5 spikes. Once you get level 3 up on the avalanche, it can get a bit scary in terms of the burst output of that hero.
Absolutely, of course. HQ and Y up against Duffy and WDR. An interesting matchup. I think Duffy definitely needs to be a little bit cautious here up against the Enchantress, but for now, Duffy appears to be doing just fine. Suppose you always have the Spirit Siphon to go back to, so not too much stress here for the DP. Of course, HQ will just try to secure his own farm on that PL, and for now, HQ having a decent enough time at 10 and 1.
I almost feel bad.
Like this laning stage from PSG at this bot lane, like you don't really have much in the way of pressuring the PL. Maybe once you have a few more levels up on Duffy, you can begin to try and pressure with Spirit Siphon and Crypt Swarm, but you really want that Crippling Fear to just kind of silence him up and not allow him to double away. Although I say that, why?
Thanks and have fun.
He's going to be caught out of the Enchantress, and I suppose that's one way to win out the lane, is just aim the support instead.
Yeah, it's a great kill to come out here for PSG. You want to build up that EXP on your Nyx and DP. So WDR getting that kill doesn't feel too bad for Duffy. And you are getting farm for your PL, but you have to watch yourself as the Enchantress here. Once you get stunned up, the magic damage coming through from Duffy can be quite obnoxious, and you do not have Nature's Attendants up on you, so you're not going to be able to heal through the trades. You will be able to bully out the Nyx, but that's just really great from WDR standing
Sabo.
in the tree line there.
Top lane. Nice lift away. Ego. Still going to be able to land the stun. Sabo may be able to get deny off on the neutral camp. He's going to try. But Ego will have the damage output. Already 0 and 2 here for the side of Pecado's squad. Yeah, a great start, and I suppose it's still very early into the game, so not too big of a deal for Wind and Rain, but you don't want to give too many kills away in this laning stage.
Yeah, you see a lot of those early kills really help you out in terms of hitting those early spikes, especially right around the 10-minute mark. You don't want to bleed out too much. It is only the sports falling, though. So overall, for the side of Wind and Rain, it's not the worst situation. Your cores are still finding a decent amount of farm, and you are kind of taking the attention away from your own cores. You're still getting something out from these lanes. It doesn't feel too bad. In terms of net worth, the lead for PSG is very, very slightly ahead, and you are still getting that presence out early on from all of your heroes. So it's pretty fine here for Wind and Rain, not completely unplayable. They're going to need some levels to start coming in, though.
Nice little CS there from Ego. Stunning up Sword to make sure he can secure the large creep in that large camp. And considering the laning stage, I think Ego's doing a great job so far in this Wraith King. Because he's always going to be behind the PL while this lane continues, but I think as long as you can just secure that initial CS to be able to rotate into the jungle, you should be happy. As bottom lane, HQ, or rather Madara, going to be chased down. Duffy going to force a doppel, but they will continue the chase. WDR won't have a stun, so won't keep going, but now Duffy will go in onto Y instead. Still waiting for that stun to fly out. There's the impale now, but it may be a bit too late. Duffy's out of mana. He's going to die for that trade. So they get Y, but they lose Duffy. Pecado squad, I don't think they'll be that happy about that.
No, and you give a kill away to Madara. That's pretty nice for the PL. Helps him ramp up his own farm timings. You trade a support away for that core kill. It's pretty darn good for Wind and Rain. Like, you can see the damage output of our PL. The right-click damage is pretty darn high. Death Prophet has a decent amount of armor, but you really don't want to overcommit there in that lane.
No, you certainly don't. I suppose I'll try again. Duffy is back in that bot lane. Madara being just very careful with his positioning, of course, respecting the power spikes of that Death Prophet and be able to salve up. The Crypt Swarm did cancel that off. Even again, stun out does land, and Y might just die again. Spirit Siphon still going. Duffy will be able to cancel the salve, it looks like. Y be able to actually run away. It looks like Duffy wasn't confident in that Crypt Swarm to be enough damage, and I probably agree. I don't think it would have been quite enough, but they do make Y feel very uncomfortable in this bot lane. And well, for an Enchantress, the one thing you really want is to be able to dominate the laning stage, because that's what your hero does best. That really hasn't been the case, though.
No, it really hasn't been yet. WDR's just been finding the angles up top, though.
Yeah, Ego's in big trouble. Nice rotation out from Cassius C. Ego, still level 5, will not be able to respawn. Very nice rotation out from our Gyro, and it's one thing with the mid-gyrocopter, right? You don't necessarily expect these rotations to happen. But Cassius C, he makes it work.
It's that spike with the gyrocopter. You get your level 6, you've got the Trust of Call down as well. Just take a dip into the side lane, get a kill, go back. For QQQ, I mean, he's at level 6, about to hit 7. I think that's a really good mark as well for the trying to look for some aggressive openings. You kind of want to slow down that PL HQ. Madara is having a bit too much of a good time, especially compared to Ego right now. In the CS as well, it's like 7 above, so you need to kind of stabilize your own safe lane there.
Top lane, Ego. He's going to be chased down, still not level 6. He needs to be very cautious. He'll try to run away, and the glimpse will be enough from Sensibility. Ego desperately just wants that level 6 mark so he can feel a little bit safer. Meanwhile, bottom lane, HQ going to be chased down by Duffy for a little bit, but Yen's still not really in danger there on that PL. And considering the lane, HQ's doing a great job staying at 45 CS's mid lane. Q drops now. WDR is going to show up, but it's way too late.
Yeah, it's just that range advantage you have here for the Gyro to nuke you down. Once he sees an opening to dive you behind your tower, no creep wave to tank through the
Oh,
spells,
look at this,
Rocket
John.
Barrage is
Ego.
now maxed out, it's just so painful.
Ego is just being dived underneath the tier 1. They'll let him go. He does have Reincarnate now, and you've got to be careful about the side of Pecado being able to TP up the top and turn once the Reincarnation has been popped, but this Wraith King, I suppose it's quite impressive how he's managed to catch up in terms of net worth as bot lane Q does manage to get an Avalanche Toss combo and does kill off Y.
Yeah, that helped stabilize the time for Q. You really just need to get started on the Tiny. He's at level 7, he's got the phase boots up, he's got full level of Avalanche, so you need to start going around looking for those kills. They make great use of the Rune Ward there, but you are giving still a lot of space here to Cassia D. Like, he clears out his camps once more, he's playing really efficiently on this Gyrocopter. You have those deep wards on the triangle area here from side of PSG, but they haven't really been able to capitalize. WDR does have an Invis rune, but still stuck at level 4 on the Nyx, so that level 6 spike with the burst damage Vendetta will give you still a ways off. And they've kind of just allowed Madara now to just take control of the lane. Like, you're past the point of zoning out the PL. He's got the Juxtapose up. He's got more levels in the rush. There's always the threat of coming in, getting that bonus damage off, at least in the first hit after that, and taking a little bit more than you'd want to. So you need to find a way to stop this PL from just taking complete control. As, again, we've been looking at the top, and there's just been so much pressure coming out for Ego that he's just going in the jungle. So he's trying to build up that steady farm for the Radiance, but with a Wraith King, you know, the Radiance timing looks to be lined up still, but it always feels like you're not going to do much at all until that first item's up.
Yeah, what makes it even worse is HQ, or rather Madara, he does have the Hood of Defiance up, which makes him that much tankier on that PL, and if you're Duffy and WDR right now at the spot lane, you're not really confident in being able to kill him off anymore. He'll just be able to constantly sustain himself on that Phantom Lancer. Look at that net worth graph as well, just the PL and Cassia C on the Gyrocopter staying at the top. Definitely great news. I do wonder how this draft does go into the mid lane, mid game, excuse me, considering the fact that there's so many heroes that just want to be able to farm the jungle. We'll see if Cassia C does go for some kind of itemization that indicates he just wants to fight. And you know what? It does seem like he is. He's got the BKB queued up very early on. So it looks like he's just going to abuse the skill set of the Gyrocopter. Just have that magic community with the BKB and just fight with the rest of the team.
Yeah, I like that for the pacing. I do kind of worry about if that BKB use doesn't line up. If you're not finding that those early team fights with a fast BKB on a Gyro, then you're not going to be able to flash farm too well because you only have the BKB. We're going to have to see them really commit for these early fights to make that work.
Well, they're moving in to defend that tier 1 tower because they really cannot afford to lose it on the side of PSG. Turn out going to be onto Sabo. Stampede can be committed. It looks like it's just going to be a bit of an escape Stampede. They just want to retreat. They will. But that mid-tier 1, so important for PSG this game. Considering how slow of a start the Wraith Kings had, if you take over that jungle by taking down that mid-tier 1 tower, Ego's going to have nowhere to farm this game. So they've really got to make sure that mid-tier 1 does not drop on the Dire side.
Yeah, they just need to secure that safe farm. A bit of a movement out here, though.
There is. Sabo has been caught out, and he will not be able to escape. A nice little pick up there from PSG. They've got the Exorcism up and available, so you're kind of looking at Duffy and wondering when he pops it to go for a tier 1 tower. You'd imagine very soon, though. He's level 8 already.
Yeah, we need to see some commitment on these objectives. Just punish Wind and Rain for, again, going for these two really greedy cores that are just sort of playing this flash farm game. They do have, again, a nice, very deep ward here on that bot jungle. And they can kind of make use of that in terms of like, getting their own push out. The side of Wind and Rain right now, they're kind of satisfied with just waiting for some more item spikes. Sword is queuing up the Blink and the Hood of Defiance on the Centaur. Once you've got the Blink up, you're going to be able to start these fights a lot smoother. And of course, Cassia C is just getting the EXP up to keep that harassment up. They're going to have to TP for mid again.
This is really smart play from Wind and Rain, but now an Impel is out. They've got Sabo on the Rubik. Stampede going to be there just in time to allow him to run, but not so much the Gyrocopter. He's going to get stunned up. Cassia C will die eventually. Sword now is going to try and back off, but Q has a toss-up in 1 second. He might just be able to get it off, and does. Setting up for his team. Sword still going to try and run, and he is a bit of a tanky boy here, but eventually they might just get through the raw HP, and they do. And with that exorcism, now PSG, they're going to turn onto that mid-tier 1 tower.
Yeah, Fortify is in, and Exorcism does sort of fade, but they find 2 big kills. They punish the Gyrocopter, they take out the Centaur before he can build up his farm. I'm really curious about the movement from Cassius C there. The Stampede was up, and he still got caught in Static Storm. Not the ideal situation for Wind and Rain, and now losing that in mid-tier 1 is also a huge blow. You need a lot of space out for the Gyro and the PL. Now you are still getting that space out here for Madara. He is, again, already at the Yasha, working towards the Diffusal Manta timings next, and he hasn't really been contested, so they are buying space out for this one hero, but I worry about this Gyrocopter. It's still the BKB rush for Cassius E. It could be impactful, considering that there's nothing that pierces that BKB, at least not until the Ags is up for Sensibility to get the mute off, and that's a long way away for Disruptor. So you should still be able to play with that big item spike, but knowing those spells are down, they should be able to take that tier 1 trade.
That they do. So they're just going to back off straight after, not wishing to play around. Of course, you've got to be very careful when Sensibility's around on the Gyro, because you can always get glimpsed back, and they might just spot out why very soon on this Enchantress, sticking around to try and get that new D ward off. Q's going to run in. There's he heals out, but the Avalanche Toss and Impel is there, but they don't have enough damage. Y's going to survive, and now WDR's in trouble. Call down is there, Cassius C, he will get glimpsed away. They will continue the chase for a little bit, but in the end they will give up on it. So both sides missing out on a nice easy support kill. Very unfortunate. I suppose you can't be too upset if you're either team though. Maybe Cassius C's a little bit more upset considering he used call down, but I think it's still fine for either side as now WDR gets lifted up. Sabo have a bit of control here with the Stampede out. They'll have the damage now. It's onto Ego, but Q jumps in with an Avalanche Toss in the back lines. Already killing off Sabo on the Rubik. Now onto Sword on that Centaur. They're going to try and kill off the Tiny meanwhile, but Q is going to be just fine, and Sword is not. They'll find another. PSG, it just seems like after the laning stage was over, the momentum just started for them.
Yeah, they found some big kills. They're getting the tower now down bot. Really good use of that exorcism from Teamfight into push. We always love to see with a hero. You're maximizing that DP's output. I think the only worry here from PSG is the fact that the PL is still free farming. Madara is always on the opposite side of the map. Still up there in terms of net worth. Ego is still about to hit the Radiant Spike here. We're looking at maybe 16 and a half minutes in. So really quick Radiant timing, considering everything else. He did go for the phase boots as well. So you're going to have that early presence from the Wraith King. You're going to be able to burn through the illusions early on. Mischance is always annoying for a Phantom Lancer. And you're going to have to contend with some of your DPS just not going through to the Wraith King at this point. But once you hit this Diffusal timing on Madara with a Yasha up with a Hood of Defiance, you could look to join some of these earlier fights.
Why? Sensibility going to get slowed up. Q is around, however. You do have the Blink available as well, so you've got to be very careful as the Glimpse back is going to be there. Into the Avalanche, but the toss is on the neutral creep. They should still have enough damage with Duffy around, and they do. Why already on that Enchantress this game, having a pretty tough time. That's his 4th death of the game. I suppose maybe you don't care too much because you're the position 5 of the team, and you do need to kind of get out there and scout out what PSG is doing. At the same time, you don't want to give those kills away too often.
Yeah, it's still okay for why. I think like the levels are still up. In terms of net worth, he's actually still ahead of both supports from the side of PSG. So you're really not dropping too far behind, and they are quick pressure Ego.
Yeah, this will be a big kill. He's got the Radiance up, but with no mana available, he is going to be such an easy kill. Madara could have basically just done that himself. He didn't really need the help. Now, Wind and Rain, they want to start moving through the bot T1 tower. I think if you're Ego, you've got to be pretty careful with your positioning. Like, you can't be farming that far forward where there's a PL that's this farmed up.
Yeah, he wasn't really protected by vision. They do drop the wards now on PSG's end. They are smoked up in the high ground here as well.
Cassius would be a nice target. Q looking to move in. Not quite yet though, but there you go. He moves in now with the avalanche toss out, but do you have the damage output? Cassius for now going to be fine, but there's your static storm being dropped. Is it enough? Not quite. He's going to run out onto the Nyx Assassin. They'll find one. Sensibility, he'll be the second. Now the call down is going to be there onto Duffy, and it looks like they'll find a third. And Wind and Rain, they made that one look very easy. It's just a matter of Madara joining the team for these fights, and suddenly Pecado just can't fight back.
Yeah, I'm just curious why PSG opted to smoke up there. They saw all 5 heroes. They were playing with a number deficit. They had the high ground, but they didn't get the burst, and it's... Oh
yeah,
goodness.
It's happening again, John. It's happening again. He might not run out of mana this time. He does have mangoes available at least. So he learned his lesson for the first time. They're going to try and protect him now. The avalanche toss is there. Onto Sabo. They'll get one, but Ego, he is still dropping. That'll be another time the Wraith King dies. It's now Q's going to try and run. They've lost the Disruptor. Q's still trying to get out of there, but Madara's not quite giving up. The Impel looks like it will be enough at the end. Still extremely bad news for Pecado squad.
Yeah, it's just really awkward right now for the Wraith King. Like, you've got Radiance up, but you're now going to have to wait for the 20-minute mark to get your Ag Shard up, just so you don't need to worry about mana. But the farm here for Wraith King is starting to lag behind. Madara's got a pretty damn big lead here at 11.5k, Wraith King at 7.8. So you're going to have to work that deficit out somehow. The burst damage coming through here from Q is already negated by the Hood of Defiance on our PL, of course. And eventually you're going to see the Pipe and Crimson Guard from the Scent. And I love this from Wind and Rain. They don't have any long cooldowns. They just keep smoking up for kills.
Well, they'll kill off Y on the Enchantress already. Duffy now going to get caught out as well. So you've lost the DP for the sake of that Pos 5 enchant, and now Cassius C. He's got the homing missile out. Q's going to try and run. WDR still around to try and help him out, and they might have to settle for Nyx instead. Spy Carapace will be there though, and Madara just going to stun himself up. Looks like PSG will be able to get the rest out. Still not going to be the greatest feeling though, losing that DP like that, and Wind and Rain now with a 7k advantage, just taking over the map. And this is exactly what you wanted to do. You just want to make sure Ego has nowhere to farm. He's got this Radiance up, but he can't really abuse it. In mid lane, oh, Madara, Static Storm out, Avalanche is there, they've got him. Glimpse back, Sensibility, he found another Sabo. What were they doing, John?
Madara was trying to push the tier 2 by himself. He tossed out his Spirit Lance on a Nyx and got stunned because of Spike Carapace, of course, and that's it. He kind of fell apart. You can't play that greedy here in Wind and Rain. You are ahead. The kill board doesn't show that, but the net worth does definitely feel that way. And that's a massive kill for PSG. So they were at 7k before that kill, 7k of a lead from Wind and Rain. Now it drops to 5. It's a massive swing. You can't afford to give that away, as once this Wraith King, once this Tiny starts to pick up the pace, hits those spikes, Ego's already just 100 gold off the Ag Shard. So you're going to have to deal with Reincarnation every single time. Like, that same movement we were seeing from Wind and Rain is just not going to work out. And
top lane, show up. Why? He's going to be pretty far back, so they can't really kill him off right now.
That should help.
Also got the Soul Crest up now on the Enchantress, so just get a little bit more difficult for Pecado squad gaming. Ego's going to try and take this time to just keep the farm up in that dire jungle, but of course they are going to just slowly start moving in. Wind and Rain, even though they did give the PL kill away about a minute ago, I don't think there's quite enough reason to back off yet. But PSG, they're the ones that smoke up. An immediate pause out from Sword at some pretty awkward timing. It's the side of Pecado, they're smoked up right nearby Y. Now, if I was Pecado, John, I'm not sure if I would go for this Enchantress kill. I feel like I'd try to avoid her and go for somebody else with higher value. I mean, Y really doesn't have much net worth. He's not really worth that much XP. He's already died 5 times. For a 4-man smoke, you'd much rather get a core kill, like, say, Sword on the Centaur. Or you've even got Cassius C around on the Gyrocopter. It's just a matter of whether they can kind of just avoid Y and not break their smoke.
yeah, I'd agree. Like, you'd want to find someone else here. Maybe consider to wrap around on a ramp instead. and invade the jungle through that route. Of course, you run the risk of being popped on low ground out of your smoke. It's always a bit of a risk when you're looking for these bigger targets, but you just don't want to kill Ench again. Like, Wise just been buying a lot of space.
Oh, they've got no choice now. Avalanche toss out. I suppose they really had no vision anyway to really be able to see the Ench, so they just kind of ran into her, broke the smoke, and just took the kill. Definitely not really that worthwhile for Pecado squad. I suppose it's just a matter of you take what you get. So maybe they could set up on Sabo. He's going to be fine. See, Sword, Stampede going to be popped. Looks like Sabo does end up going down to Q, but now they're going to make the jump in on the Tiny. The stun coming in, and he does connect in time. Oh, the homing missile. It just slowly made its way over. And that TP duration just felt like forever.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate for PSG. They're going to be very happy about that for Wind and Rain. It allows them to go into the Roche here as well. Now, they do have to worry about Static Storm. Still up on Sensibility. They saw them go in with a ward as well. But looks like they should still be able to melt this one. PSG, they're going to need someone to step up in here if they want to contest this Roche.
They definitely will. There are sentries around, so you can't quite Vendetta in, and of course the Knicks will know that. I don't think there's a way for them to initiate here. They just haven't got the hero without the Tiny. And yeah, they've backed off. They know they can't do it. Hell, even looking at Sword in that mid lane, you kind of know you can't burst him in time before the rest of his team makes it over to him. They just leave them be. And Wind and Rain now will have an Aegis to play with, and of course that does go into Madara. Looks like they are going to slowly but surely start setting up on that top tier 1 tower now. Oh, Madara's almost got a Heart of Tarrasque.
Yeah, he's just so farming that PL. About 4k above the Raid King, just one really big item above the next core. That's always a great feeling for a pause 1. You've got the freest time in your lane. You have the freest time in farming in this downtime. And PSG are still trying to get a bit of a gold injection. Like, Ego's, again, lagging a bit behind. Q's kind of even there. Duffy has kind of stalled out after the Yule's 4-staff. And with that tier 2 up top taking, of course, that means you're going to lose out into an FP per minute here as well with the outposts being taken away. And HQ's just so confident that he just starts chipping away on the high ground. And with that early Crimson Guard from Sword, it just feels like he can't damage this PL.
Certainly does. Alright, eventually just going to back off. The WDR is actually right next to him. He's going to find out now. He's going to impale out on the PL, but it's not going to lead to much. I suppose if you are Madara now, you just kind of think to yourself, I'll go finish the hard off first, and then I'll return back to the high ground. They're going to have the Aegis by the time he has the hard up anyway. So there's no real rush here. In fact, never mind, they found a massive target. Ego again being caught out of the Wraith King. He has some help around this time, but there goes his first life. Onto Q now. That Tiny is dropping way too darn fast, and that'll be your Tiny gone to boot. They got Ego out of there. But you lost your mid-Tiny again. There's a DD rune at the top rune spot to boot, so now you've got some double damage. And knowing the reincarnation's not going to be available for another 2 minutes, you might try to go high ground.
Oh yeah, it's a huge opening there for Wind and Rain. And this is where it gets a bit rough for the Raid King. Look at the level deficit between our Raid King and our PL. Level 18 in PL, still stuck at level 16 for the Raid King.
Stun out. Down the DP, Duffy heals himself up and should be alright as Madara is quite focused in on that tier 3 tower. Slowly but surely they'll get it as now the Nyx Assassin being caught out. He'll try to use himself up, but there's just stun out. WDR going down to Sword. Tier 3 about halfway now. Pecado still looking for a way to defend this, but you can't really rely on Ego being able to join the team fight. Still 15 seconds for that reincarnation up, and he just doesn't want to die again. As now a big stun out Sword underneath the tier 4 towers. He found Sensibility and Ego. He is going to be taken down. They will get the Aegis. That's about all they've got so far, though. Now Madara will just doppel away. No stress. On to the other racks.
So difficult for PSG. Like, they still have Static Storm, but there's just no easy setup for Sensibility to get that big spell use. And it just comes down to draft. Your best initiations, your Tiny, blinking in, avalanching a couple of heroes, but it's always a major risk for Q without any BKB up yet.
Tier 3 tower about to drop. At least this time Ego will have that secondary life on the Wraith King, but with this PL being this farmed up, it doesn't feel like it's going to make anywhere near the difference having that secondary life. You'll just kind of be dying twice is all that's going to happen, although they do jump in now with an Avalanche Toss and a Static Storm, but they've done no damage. He only lost half his HP, and now will turn right back around. Cassius C, meanwhile, with the massive call down and the Flak Cannon just bursting him out, and they call him. They have had enough. Ooh. This game does feel quite impossible now for PSG. So far for Wind and Ranger, it seems like the roster changes might be working out.
Yeah, the sub-in is kind of paying off here for Wind and Rain. They look really strong in this first game. They managed to get this Gyrocopter and PL combo to work. It boiled down to the fact that they were getting a ton of space out for Madara. PSG kind of left the PL alone. They were trying to play mid, trying to play top instead. And even in that PL lane and the bot lane, they were only losing Y. Y was the one dying, taking the hits, tanking the gank, as you like to say, Mike. And
yeah,
they couldn't get the punishment in that big here. I think it came down to the fact that there was a really greedy draft from Wind and Rain, but they had a Gyro mid that worked really nicely against a Tiny. And that range advantage just made it so hard for Q to get his initial farm and get his initial aggression out. And it just kind of allowed the Gyrocopter to still have impact. You couldn't dominate that mid matchup when on paper, the Gyro's a super greedy core. He's solo in the lane, so you don't get as much potential out from Rocket Barrage without running a risk yourself. But they could never punish from PSG's end. So we'll have to see if they can kind of fix those draft issues going into Game 2. But Wind and Rain, this is the best they've looked so far in the lower div, in my opinion.
I would agree with you on that, John, and we'll see how they do in Game 2 and what PSG is going to change up moving into that game number 2. For now, it is MLP Dota and JohnXFire, and we are going to be back in roughly 10 minutes to see how Game 2 does pan out. We'll see you then.